Going live. And good evening, folks, and welcome back to our page. It's Astronomy by the Bay. It's Chris Kerwin here, coming back to you live again. Happy winter solstice, first of all, I guess. And with me this evening, we have Paul Owen. Paul is a RASC NB member here in New Brunswick. And say hi, Paul.
Hi, Paul.
I knew that was going to happen. Anyway, we've got cloudy skies here in St. John's, so we're out of business again as far as offering some live views through to you. But what we are going to be able to do is we're going to talk a lot about our winter solstice that we're into right now, and somewhat about what we can offer in the winter skies coming up over these next few weeks or so. Maybe some people out there have a few vacation days on the way, and we're hoping you do anyway. And so what we're going to try to do is take a look at our wintertime sky and talk about Orion, which is really our major constellation in the winter sky. Coming up in sometime in January, we'll probably get some live feeds out onto some of the targets. But Paul has captured some of the targets previously. Actually, he just captured one of them last night there, the Horsehead Nebula. So we're going to offer that, and Paul's going to give us a bit of a discussion about how he captured it and what it's all about. But first of all, I guess we should talk a little bit about the winter solstice. So what I wanted to do is show a few slides possible. And Paul, you can keep an eye on the live stream there for me.
Sure will. Yeah.
And we'll see. We'll talk a little bit about what we're looking at. So, of course, we get into the winter solstice came this morning here at 12:19 a.m. Atlantic Standard Time. And that gives us the shortest day of the year. So a little bit of discussion about why it's our shortest day. I'm going to try to make sure that the YouTube live stream is updating. Paul, are you seeing my picture up there now on YouTube yet?
Not yet. I still see
Okay.
I still see Stellarium.
Okay. And
SkySat C6.
Okay, so let's go back to be sure that I'm sharing here, first of all.
Yeah.
Here we go. Let's try it now.
There you are.
You got me now. Okay, perfect. Technical glitches that we're going to get through as we as we work as we work our way through this. So a little bit about the winter solstice. The date of the winter solstice, of course, it varies from year to year, and it can fall anywhere between December the 20th and the 23rd, with the 21st or the 22nd being the most common dates. And the reason for this is because there's something called the tropical year. The time it takes for the sun to return to the same spot relative to Earth is different from the calendar year. Of course, we sit at a 23.5 degree angle from vertical. And today, the sun's rays are directly overhead of what we call the Tropic of Capricorn. So that's in the southern hemisphere, of course. And this morning, at 12:19 a.m. And it's the same. It was the same all over the Earth. We all experienced it at the same time. The sun was directly overhead at the Tropic of Capricorn. So that only lasted for a few seconds, I guess really instantaneously. And now the sun is on its approach, coming back to our northern hemisphere again. So already the days are going to start getting longer. So let's take another look here at a few other photos that I had up. Let's take a comparison here. So here's our December solstice screen. So here's where the sun sat this morning at noon, pretty low in the horizon. That's the moon actually in our southwestern sky this morning. Of course, the moon's up in the daytime sky right now. And from there, we could look at what it would look like in the March equinox. So here we are in March, and the sun, of course, appears much higher in March.
Chris.
Yep.
I'm still I'm watching the YouTube side, and I'm still not seeing you. I'm not seeing your presentation.
Oh, you're not?
No.
Oh, well, thanks. Okay, let's see what's going on here. I wonder why we're not sharing my screen. I am sharing my screen at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And anything there now? Wow. Not sure exactly what's going on here, Paul.
That's okay. That's all right.
Let's let's see what's going on here. Screen sharing options. I can stop sharing. And why don't you try start to share your screen for a second, Paul, if you would.
Sure will.
And I am seeing myself there in your screen, no problem. So let me, you try stop sharing, and I'll go back to start sharing. And, wow. There, so are we back? Are we back to seeing me now?
I'm just waiting for it to come up on YouTube there. Yeah, Mike writes he sees the Stellarium screen, but that was, we'll just wait for a few seconds to see if it comes through.
Okay. And the stream is showing that it's live.
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
The stream is actually showing that it's live. And I'm not quite sure why we're not getting a show there. Connection still is excellent.
Yeah.
And let's try this, Paul.
Okay. Hello, Peter.
Still waiting to see the screen come up.
Okay.
Any change yet?
Not on
No?
YouTube.
Okay.
I can see, what I'm seeing is Stellarium on YouTube.
Okay, so let's cancel out this Stellarium. Hang on, Paul, and maybe we gotta go this way. Hang on, there we go. I think we might have found it. Are we back to where we were?
Yes.
We are. Okay. Now can you see my Stellarium screen moving around?
I sure can.
Okay.
But I'm waiting to see it on
You
YouTube.
see on YouTube, yep.
Yeah. Well, I just saw a mouse fly by.
There we go. I think we're back to where we needed to be.
There you go. Okay, yeah.
Apologize, folks. Okay, I think we're back. Wow.
How can we run complicated astronomy equipment? I don't know.
That's that winter solstice thing working on us. I'm quite sure.
Well, it's a good thing we're getting more light. We need it.
Yeah, I think we do. Okay, let's go back to where I was. I guess sharing a little bit of talk about what
Yeah,
we were talking about the winter
take
solstice. There now.
take-
Now are we seeing an image, Paul?
Just give me a sec here.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a delay, so I'm just waiting for
Yep,
it to come
okay.
through there. So
We just want to be sure we're. Mike says we're good now. Okay, perfect. All right, let's get back to our talk.
there you go. You're on.
Well, there's 10 minutes. All right,
All
a
right.
little bit about the winter solstice. The date of the winter solstice varies from year to year, and it can fall anywhere between December the 20th and 23rd, with the 21st or 22nd being the most common dates. The reason for this is because the tropical year, the time it takes for the sun to return to the same spot relative to Earth, is different from the calendar year. The next solstice, occurring on December the 20th, actually won't happen until 2080. And the next December the 23rd solstice won't happen until 2303. And that, of course, is because of the tilt of our planet. We're tilted at 23.5 degrees relative to vertical. And today, the sun's rays are parallel or are directly overhead of the Tropic of Cancer, which is this line right here, down below the equator line here, right? Okay, so to prove a little bit of that information, here we are with December's timetable, and this is taken from the timeanddate.com site. And we can see that as we approach from December the 11th, working our way down to December 22nd, today's date, these are the amount of seconds that we've lost in each day on our way down of daylight.
Oh, Chris,
Mm-hmm.
they're saying that your audio is a bit low.
Audio's a bit low, okay?
Yeah,
I'm at 100% on my volume.
that's your speaker, and try your microphone.
Yeah. And yeah.
Okay, so if you go over to microphone down, keep coming down.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
And yeah, I don't want to be doing all this on YouTube. Why don't you
Yeah,
share your screen
yeah.
there, Paul?
Okay.
Bring up a picture of stellarium there for a moment, if you would.
All right.
And I'll see if I can get back to my volume button. Be able to share your screen.
Yeah. And I'll bring stellarium up.
Okay.
There we are.
And I guess I just need a minute to take a look at my microphone settings.
Okay, so
volume.
all right. So while you're doing that, Chris's volume can be turned up a bit. Okay, Canuck 51, thank you. While Chris is looking to make an adjustment on his video, because I can hear Chris fine in my ears, so it's just something happening on the line out. So so what we're going to be looking at a little bit later on, after he gets his voice straightened away, is we're going to be looking at Orion tonight, and we chose that because we wanted to have probably the most prominent target in the sky this time of the year. We wanted to have a chat about that because of all the great things that you can look at it from the ground, looking up, just looking at the constellation, with the naked eyes. It's a beautiful target to look at with binoculars because of the various stars and also the nebulosity that you can see with those. And of course, with a telescope, it's an amazing target because there are so many great things in and around Orion that we can look at. So we're finding that Rob Dare, I'm not getting any audio now. No, I guess not. Okay, can you still hear me there, Rob Dare? I guess. Can you hear my voice now? I'll keep chatting away here. And
I'm able to hear you, no problem, Paul.
Okay, good. And I'm just going to take a quick look at my mixer settings. There we go. I'll turn that down. Okay. So
Paul, do you want to you there, Paul?
I'm here, yeah.
Okay. Let me try to start sharing my desktop here for a second.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think I've got you as a large screen here on my screen.
Okay, and you can just have to hit your start sharing. You should be good.
Yep, and I am sharing, I think, right now.
Okay, I'll stop that. Okay, no, I'm not now. You're good.
Okay, so we're back to the winter solstice, I guess, talk, eh? And I'm looking at the live feed here too. So it looks like the live feed is keeping up with me.
I need a new hat.
Good one.
Oh my goodness. After last night, well, maybe so, but we're doing good, so I'm sticking with it.
Okay, I guess I'd just like to check and see how the volume is coming through now. If people can comment, let us know if the volume is still if it's any better at all.
Okay, I'll keep an eye on that.
Okay.
Right now, your your solstice is back up, so we'll see if we get somebody commenting on your volume.
Okay, so let me continue on with the solstice talk. Not only does the solstice occur on a specific day, but it also occurs at a specific time of day, corresponding to the instant the North Pole is aimed furthest away from the sun on the 23.5 degree tilt of the Earth's axis. This is also the time when the sun shines directly over the Tropic of Capricorn, as we see here. Uh, in 2019, this moment occurs at 4:19 UTC, or Coordinated Universal Time, on December the 22nd. Of course, for those of us in Atlantic time, the solstice occurred at 12:19 today. And regardless of where you live on the planet, the solstice happens at the same moment for everyone on the planet. Of course, the daylight hours grow shorter and shorter as the winter solstice approaches, and begin to slowly lengthen after that. It's no wonder that the days of the solstice are referred to in some cultures as the shortest days of the year, or the extreme of winter. For instance, here in St. John today, we experienced 8 hours, 43 minutes, and 57 seconds of daylight. And tomorrow we gain an extra 4 seconds of daylight, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, but it is 4 seconds in the right direction for some of you anyway.
Sorry, Chris. There's still no change in your voice. So,
Oh,
do you have a headset you can plug in?
I do, but it doesn't have a mic on it.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah,
Okay. So there's a microphone issue with your.
it seems to be. I'll try to move the laptop a little bit closer. Hopefully that might help a bit.
Okay.
Um, so anyway, we gained about 4 seconds of daylight. That compares to about 15 hours and 39 minutes on the summer solstice. And Helsinki, Finland, actually today will get about 5 hours and 45 minutes of light today. And most of the people in Alaska actually will have no sunrise at all. And they haven't had any really since November. And the next sunrise won't be until January the 22nd. While the North Pole has had no sunrise since October. The South Pole, though, will be basking in the glow of the midnight sun, which won't set really until about March. Still seeing the same comments, Paul, for volume?
I'm waiting for another one to come
Okay,
in.
yeah.
You are readable, but volume is low.
Okay.
So if you can cuddle up to your microphone a little bit more, that may help.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
So the seeming death of the light and the very real threat of starvation over the winter months would have weighed heavily on those in early societies who held various solstice celebrations and rites meant to herald the return of the sun and hope for new life. So that's a bit about the winter solstice. Scandinavian and Germanic pagans lit fires and may have burned Yule logs. There's a familiar term, as a symbolic means of welcoming back the light. Cattle and other animals were slaughtered around midwinter, followed by feasting on what was the last fresh meat for several months. And the word solstice actually comes from the Latin term called solstitium, containing sol, which means sun, and the past participle stem of sistere, meaning to make a stand. This comes from the fact that the sun's position in the sky relative to the horizon at noon, which increases and decreases throughout the year, appears to pause in the days surrounding the solstice. And that's about it about the winter solstice, Paul. But yeah, I guess if we were to talk a little bit about what that leads us into, is really is leading us into these longer nights that we appreciate as astronomers, getting out under the night sky and
mhm.
enjoying the views that we can get at this time of year, especially our views to the southern sky, and it's always usually southern sky that we're kind of mostly focused on anyway. Usually the planets through the summertime, the summer triangle, and the Milky Way, of course, the view of the central part of the Milky Way with Sagittarius in the summertime sky. But if we panned around to our wintertime sky, I guess we would look at something like this. And let's make sure that this is coming up on Stellarium. I wonder if they're still getting the same comments for Mike, but I'm trying the best I can here at the moment. Same, no change. Okay. Still low, Chris. Readable, but volume is low. Okay. So when we get back to your screen, Paul, I'll try a few more settings. But in the
No
meantime,
problem.
we're going to try to take a look at what we do see in our night sky. So here's about 9:20 this evening, and we're looking south, of course, southeast, and of course that big constellation that we see here, right in the center of our field of view, is Orion. And Orion is our major wintertime constellation, but it's just part of the big picture here. And if I wanted to bring on the big picture, I would go over here in Stellarium I can bring on what's called asterisms, and asterisms are shapes in the sky that aren't really constellations, but they signify shapes to us. So, for instance, if I ran around to the northern sky, then we would see here's the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper, and they're both parts of Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, of course. But those are asterisms, so the constellation is not the Little Dipper or the Big Dipper. Those are just parts of larger constellations. But if we spin around this part of the sky, we can see something called the winter hexagon. And the winter hexagon is this huge shape that makes up most of our east and southeast sky at this time of year. And of course, as we move the time ahead, it's going to come up quite a bit higher. But it's made up of several stars. This is the bright star Capella here, and then we have Aldebaran and Taurus, and then we have one of the feet of Orion here, Rigel, and then we drop down to Sirius, and then over to Procyon, and then up to Castor in the heads of Gemini, the twins, and then back up again to Capella. So this is what we call the winter hexagon. And also within that winter hexagon is this one called the winter triangle. So the winter triangle is made up of Betelgeuse, or Betelgeuse, however you like to call it, down into Sirius, and then over to Procyon. So these three make up what we call the summer triangle. And from there, I'm going to pass it over to Paul while I try to improve my microphone a little bit. And Paul is going to, I'm going to take off these little bit of objects here first, Paul.
Okay.
Still with me there, are you? Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Let's take off the asterisms and take a little bit closer look at Orion itself. And of course, we have Betelgeuse and we've got Rigel at the opposite corner. And as we pan in a little bit closer to Orion, we're going to take a look at these three stars here called Alnitak, Alnilam, and Mintaka that make up the belt, and then this area down below called the Orion Nebula. But there's actually a whole lot more in here as we zoom in that are what we call deep sky objects. And these deep sky objects are areas of the sky where clouds of nebula or large numbers of stars are gathered together to provide us with some pleasing views. And some of those views were captured just recently by Paul. And Paul, if you could take over and
Sure.
I'll stop sharing my screen.
Yep.
And I'll get you to start sharing your screen.
Okay.
And Paul's going to give us a little bit of talk about, there we go.
Here I am. Hello.
Hey, hello.
All right. So I'll put my stellarium up here just for a moment. And so just in and around Orion, there are we talked a little bit about earlier, there's a lot of very interesting nighttime objects. And Orion to me is like is the winter version of Cygnus in the summer. And both of these constellations have a lot of treasures in and around them. And so last night I was actually out and I took a quick picture of the Horsehead. The skies weren't really great, and I only got about an hour's worth of data before that really misty cloud cover came in. So I'll see if I've got a picture or two I can share with you. So just bear with me for 1 second, and I'll find my photographs. So here's the first one that I took last night. And again, it was just a short photograph, or actually series of photographs. There's maybe about an hour's worth of data there. And on this particular one, you can see what's duly named the Horsehead, because of course the shape that you see right there is certainly very much like that of a horse. If you look right over to the left of it a little bit, that is the star Alnitak, and that's as you can see there's a bright ring around that, and there's a bright ring around a lot of the things you're seeing. So that's a lot of mist that I was dealing with last night. But in any event, this is one of the jewels. This is probably one of the most photographed items that you'll see, and that's in the very bottom of the belt, right where Alnitak is. Right beside it is the Horsehead. To try to look at that with a telescope, you would definitely need a beta filter, because it's just to look at it without any kind of filtration, you may not get a good glimpse of that even in the darkest of skies. Just below Alnitak also is what they call the Flame Nebula. So there's two great beautiful nebulas there, and emission nebulas, lots of hydrogen alpha going on there. So that's what we started with, was that one last night. Also in and around Orion, if you go down, I'm going to show you this photograph here. So this is a photograph of Orion, a much wider field of view. And you can see that there's the Orion belt right there. So that, again, is the 3 stars Chris mentioned earlier. And then down here, if you're looking at it through binoculars, it would look like 3 little stars going this way, and that's called the Sword. And in and around there, that's where you're going to see M42 and the Running Man. And of course, they call that the Great Orion Nebula. When you look at that with a pair of binoculars or a telescope, you basically see just a little bit of the green wispiness here in and around this. We'll call it the wing area. So if this was a bird and that was his head, this here would be somewhat of the wings. And that's what you would see through a telescope. So so this was shot through just a regular camera lens. I think I used an 85 millimeter on a star tracker, and you get a nice swath of the sky in and around Orion. So now I'm going to show you what Orion actually looks like when you get a nice close-up view of it. So that's what you're actually having the opportunity to see. So when you're looking through magazines, these are the kind of objects that you'll actually see. You'll never see that with a telescope, but this, when you're looking at that part of the Orion belt, when you're looking back at this section here in the little belt area, this is all basically hiding right in there. And so when you have a telescope, that's one of the most amazing things that you'll actually be able to get out of that. So that is probably between that and the Horsehead. Those are the jewels that are right in the constellation of Orion, and of course the Running Man. And if you've never seen that before, then of course he looks like his little head's here, his 2 arms are there, and his legs, and he's out there trucking along. And it looks to me like that's a reflection of him down below. So he's almost running on water. So, cool. But anyway, that's what they call the Running Man. Nice. Okay, so so going a bit up and to the side of, I'll go back to the smaller picture first. Actually, I'll go back to Stellarium. So if you look closely enough at Orion, so you can see basically, I call it the hourglass figure. So there's the belt, and there's the sword. So if you look right up to Betelgeuse, and then look right down, so you almost form a triangle right here. This here is what they call the Rosette Nebula. And the Rosette Nebula, I'll show you a picture of that so you can actually get the reason why they call it that. So it looks like a big rose. And in the center of that nebula is a really, really, really nice star cluster. It's an open cluster, but these stars are very, very bright. They're blue, blue giants, a lot of them. They're very, very hot and very, very active. And in and around a lot of these nebulas, you'll find a lot of clusters in there. And of course, it's the stars that help light them up quite a little bit. So that's what they call the Rosette Nebula. Again, so that's back right here in just off to the side of Orion. If you're looking at, actually, I'm going to have a look here. Just one sec. I'm going to pull up Betelgeuse, sure. The star. Sorry, Chris.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
So there's a picture of Betelgeuse, and the reason you're seeing the spikes on that was taken through a Dobsonian telescope, which has got those little spider veins in the front, and that's how you're getting those refraction spikes. And so you can see the color of that. That was about as real to life as I could get that. But if you're standing outside naked eye in a dark sky, when you look up at Betelgeuse, it does have that nice orangish, reddish, sandy kind of a glow to it, because it's what they call a red giant, and it's a huge, huge star. And that's the one that they're saying within the next, between now and 1 million years from now, that's the one that they're going to say that's going to be going supernova. Now, they're talking a lot about that star have dimmed over the last few years. And keep in mind that is a variable star, so it's in its nature to change change its magnitude. And that's the nature of what those stars do. But this one has been its lowest, I guess, since in the last 25 years. The one there's a astronomer who's been following that, and he's saying is within the last 25 years, it's at its dimmest that it's been. So we'll see what happens in the next little bit. Considering that's 640 million or 640 light years away, it's we're probably not going to see a big change right away on it. But
we might not see it in our lifetime, but who knows, right? That's the thing.
Exactly. So that's Betelgeuse there. So the other star that you see in and around that's similar to Betelgeuse is Aldebaran, which is this star right up here, and that's up in the Hyades. And no, not the high 80s, but
in Taurus.
I wish it was. It's too cold up, but anyway, up there. So I have a picture of that as well, and here's a picture of Aldebaran. So you can see it's a little tiny different in color, but the same nature of star. So again, it's another huge, large star. And when you look up at the sky at night, when you look at that, at this particular constellation, Taurus, and then you look at that small cluster, the Hyades, that looks what they call the eye of the bull, and because that really is an absolutely beautiful star to look at. Through binoculars is fantastic, and of course through there it was through a Dobsonian telescope. So those are just a couple of the things that you would see in and around Orion. Oh, there's one other one I want to show you. So now if you go up a little higher, I call this the summer triplet. That's just my own little name I put to it, because you have, of course, the Pleiades, then you have the Hyades, and then of course you have Orion, all right in a row. And when they come up, when we have our star parties in late August, we stay up all night just to see this start to rear its head, and we know that the winter constellations are coming.
That's right.
Anyway, so this one here is what they call the Seven Sisters, or if you've seen a Subaru car, they've got that on their on the hood of their cars. And this is actually what that would look like if you were to take it and photograph it. So it would look like that, and that's the reason that's all blue. Is that's what they call a reflection nebula. So those are just basically really, really hot stars, and there's a lot of oxygen gas that's just around there. And those stars are so bright they're actually reflecting that gas, and that's why the gas, of course, is blue. So that's it's rich in O3 or oxygen, is what that is. So that again is another one of the nice treasures. And in this time of the year, that's the first thing that you'll see come up. So as soon as it's dark, that's actually up in the sky at probably about 30 degrees coming out of the east. So that's an absolutely wonderful target. That looks better in binoculars than it does in a telescope, simply because in a telescope you can't get all of it in there. But with binoculars, you can see the whole thing, and it's just absolutely stunning. You won't quite see the nebulosity unless you're in a really, really dark sky. It won't look as blue as this, but you can see some wisps in and around some of those bright stars. So that's that one.
And a great binocular target as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. An amazing binocular target. So those are the there's one other one I want to show you actually. So if you're out and about now, where I live, I have I'm out here in Hampton, and due south to me, I've got really, really a lot of light pollution. And I'm going to show you a picture of what my skies look like when I just took like a 20-second photograph of Orion. So there it is there. So there's Orion here, all in its glory, just cresting my house. And this is pretty much over here would be south. So this would be southwest. And then, of course, there's the Pleiades and the Hyades right there. So there's Aldebaran shining in all its glory. There's Betelgeuse, or Betelgeuse, however you want to pronounce it. And, of course, there's your belt and the sword in Orion. And that's an absolutely wonderful thing to look at, just standing outside on your back deck, which is where I was when I was looking at that. And just to sit back and watch that is amazing. Right up here, you'll see the feet of Castor and Pollux, Gemini the twins. So if my camera lens was wide enough, you'd be able to see those two fellas sitting here. And just down here a little bit is Sirius. I think that's Sirius right there, actually. So it's an extremely bright, actually it's the brightest star in our sky.
Yeah, it is. Right. Yep.
Yeah. So those are just a few of the things that you can see in and around Orion. And it's one of the ones that or one of the reasons rather, why we get excited about seeing Orion, because there's just so much to look at. If you're a photographer, there's so much to take pictures of. If you're a binocular person or a telescope person, there's so much to see. And there's a lot more targets than that in and around Orion, but I just want to show you those ones because those ones are uh,
Yeah.
basically the key targets.
It's like the summer triangle, I guess, for us in the summertime, Paul. Eh? There's so much up in that area, up in Cygnus and stuff. I mean, that's our wintertime Cygnus constellation, Orion.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's so
Absolutely.
much in there that, and a lot of this again is visible just through binoculars. So try the Orion Nebula with binoculars. You'd be amazed at what you can see. And the Pleiades, of course, too. And then if we spun, Paul, since you've got your program up and running, and I don't want to risk anything else at this point, maybe you can just run Stellarium there for me while I'm still sharing your screen,
Sure.
because I'm
Sure.
not sure what's
Before,
happening with the Skype, but somewhere
okay.
on the YouTube live feed, it's not allowing me to share your screen. So
Okay.
we'll deal with that
So,
later on. But
all
um,
right. So, before we do that, Ann McAllister was asking,
mhm,
what are the pink streaks in the sky above my rooftop shot?
there you go.
So let me have a look at that. We'll see what those pink streaks are, and I'll open that photo again. So I'm assuming what you're talking about, Ann, are these streaks that are going all over the place here on the rooftop shot. Those are clouds. So when you're photographing a wide angle shot like this, especially with the light that I've got there, you're going to see a lot of cloud. Now, what happens is my camera is focused on Orion, so it's not moving, but the clouds are moving. So instead of looking like these just little puffy clouds, they're actually streaking because they're actually moving. So the long exposure is giving you the illusion that the clouds are streaking, but you're actually seeing the movement of where they started, which is probably right about here, and they're basically just moving right along here, but my camera's not moving, but yet the lens is still open, so it makes it look like a streak, but it's just clouds is what
Yeah,
it is.
yeah,
So I hope that answered your question there, Ann.
perfect. Thanks, Paul.
Okay, I'll get back to Stellarium there.
So if we
Okay,
were, so maybe we could just zoom out of Orion a little bit,
sure.
and we'll take a look at using Orion as a signpost. We can use the Big Dipper as a signpost, but we use, I guess, maybe more in the southern and the summertime sky. But
Hmm.
we can use also use Orion as a signpost to find our way around the wintertime sky. So
Okay,
if we say we drew a line up and through the stars of Orion's belt, and then we'd end up at Aldebaran, as Paul pointed out there. So straight
right
up there,
here.
there's Aldebaran for us, and that's the eye of the bull in Taurus, of course. And Aldebaran is actually the 13th brightest star in the sky. It has a very distinctive reddish orange color, and it's really an old and a dying star. If it were placed in the same location as our sun, it would actually extend out past Mercury. Um, if we extend that line further, we end up at the Pleiades, as Paul just mentioned. Beautiful star cluster in binoculars. And then if we extend that line downward through Orion's belt, it will put us down to Sirius. So that's the brightest star in the sky right there. Sirius is actually a double star, and it's actually relatively close to Earth, only 8.6 light years away, which 1 light year is 10 trillion kilometers. So relatively close, I guess, compared to other objects in our sky. It's so bright that if it were placed next to our sun, it would actually be about 20 times more luminous or more bright than our sun. So if we take now and draw a line upward through the bottom left and through one of the belt stars of Orion, we would end up at Capella. So yeah, right through that star there and go straight up. And
There we go.
there we go. That'll bring us up to Capella. That's a yellow star like our sun and the brightest star in the constellation of Auriga. Like many stars we see, Capella has a companion star, but something more than that, for it is actually two pairs of binary stars. Cool. So binary stars are stars that actually orbit each other through one central point of gravity, of course. And if we take another line and we draw down to the left through the top two stars of Orion, that puts us at Procyon, the other dog star in Canis Minor. So again, drawn to the left through the top two stars of Orion. Yep, there we go. So from yeah, through Betelgeuse and all the way down to Procyon. Procyon is still the eighth brightest star in our sky, and is about the same brightness as Betelgeuse and Orion. And one more line drawn upward through the bottom right and the top left of Orion leads us up to Castor and Pollux and Gemini, the twins. And Pollux is the brighter twin star on the left, and it's a yellowish color and is about 34 light years away. It's about 30 times brighter than our sun and about 10 times the diameter of our sun. Now, Castor, like many stars, appears as one point of light in our night sky, but it's actually a sextuplet system. There's three binary sets of stars there, all orbiting in a complex way around a central point of mass. Although Castor and Pollux appear together in our sky, the Castor multiple system is actually almost twice as far away as Pollux is. So there's
Oh,
a sextuplet system in Castor. Cool. Three sets of binary stars all orbiting around the central mass. So that's some information on how to use Orion itself as a signpost.
I love it. It's a great way to get around the sky.
So if we were going to go out and do some observing, Paul, say for the wintertime sky, what would you suggest as equipment to take with you, I guess? Say
Okay,
we've got a
so
few days, holidays now, we got some vacation days, and we want to get out and enjoy some of the wintertime sky. What would you want to focus on?
well, now if I was going to take a run out this time of the year, of course it's really cold. So the first thing I'd want to do is bundle myself up. One of our astronomer friends that lives out towards St. Martin's, she's on the hunt for just the thing, and so she's been asking a lot of questions about what she should and shouldn't wear. And there's a number of things that you can get. I think you, Chris, have one of those heated winter coats, so it's actually lined with heaters on the inside,
I do,
and
yeah.
it runs by batteries.
Yes.
And so that would be an absolute, for me, if I had one, that would be the first thing I would go grab, and to certainly try to keep warm. The second thing I would decide is if I'm just going to go out and just do some casual looking and maybe not for a long period of time, then I would take a small telescope, something like the one that you gave away on your page, your Facebook page there last week.
Mm-hmm.
And a nice small little tabletop Dobsonian, absolutely perfect. Bring that in along with, or a pair of binoculars would be, for looking at these things that were talked about here tonight. Those are the things that I would probably bring if I was bringing the telescope. If I had access to a filter, I would certainly bring one of the beta filters along to try to get a good look at the horse head.
Right.
And if you can see that, that's wonderful. You can certainly see Orion even with binoculars. You can see some of it, but the more that you magnify it and get a little bit more light gathering with a larger objective, like in the small Dobsonian, you'll get to see more detail because you're going to collect more light.
Yeah.
So that I would certainly bring some binoculars or a small telescope. Also some hand warmers. Just you can get them at Canadian Tire anywhere. They're just the little orange hand warmers. You just put in your coat pocket. When your hands get chilly, slip them in there. Or if you're wearing mittens, just keep them right in there, and that way your hands will stay nice and warm. Also, if you're a coffee drinker, certainly a thermos of nice hot coffee, or if you're a hot chocolate drinker, whatever your pleasure, either of those things just to keep yourself nice and warm on the inside. And there's nothing like sitting in a nice chair, looking at the night sky with a warm cup of cocoa,
Yeah.
and really enjoying it. So, and speaking of chairs, one of those little fold-up chairs that you would take to the beach are absolutely perfect for that. If you're not too far a walk away from where your vehicle is, then one of those gravity chairs, which aren't that much larger, I would take one of those because then you can lean back. And if you are using binoculars, you'd be totally comfortable and very stable to hold binoculars to look at the Milky Way and all the things that are up there.
And that's the whole thing is the comfort level is really important. It's like probably one of the first things I suggest to people when they're talking about buying a telescope. Make sure that you've got a nice chair first of all, because the chair is really important. You don't want to be focused on how you're standing, how your back is sore, your knees are bent, or whatever. You get a cramp in your leg. All that kind of stuff takes away from your actual viewing time. So the best thing, first of all, when you buy a telescope, is to go out and buy a chair right away, and find a chair that's comfortable for you. It doesn't matter if it's a lawn chair or a typical beach chair or whatever. something that you find comfortable. And even if you're going out with, like Paul said, a small telescope, we used to call those grab and go scopes. So you could grab it, go out the door quickly, take a quick look at the moon or the Orion Nebula, the Pleiades, that type of thing. So those are grab and go type models. And the best telescope that you're going to have is going to be the one that you use the most often. So generally, my little 4.5 inch reflector tabletop top here is one of my best telescopes, not because it was the most expensive, but it's the most easiest to grab a hold of and take out and get a real quick view. Now, the other thing is too, when you're standing outside on a cold night, the temperature outside is always a bit about, you have to dress for about 10 to 15 degrees colder than it actually is. Because the thing is that you're not moving around, you're just kind of staying in one spot, and you're really not generating a whole lot of energy. So you'll find that your extremities will cool off pretty quick. So a hat is where we lose about 80% of our heat, especially out of this head. So yeah, we lose a lot of heat out through the top of our heads and our extremities, our hands, our feet. So if you're going to be standing on cold snow, you're going to want a pair of snowmobile boots or something like that, something with even with a felt liner in it. Now they make actually battery operated pads that sit inside your boots, and I guess they'd be a nice feature. They have battery operated gloves as well. Paul mentioned the battery operated coat, and what I would do is I would wear that inside of a parka, so a parka over the top of all of that, and that would keep the heat close to your body. So it's all about generating enough heat to keep yourself comfortable. Um, Mike is on here and mentioning coffee. Yes, Mike, absolutely. Coffee drinkers love the night sky, and all the night sky guys love the coffee, and it's just because we've got something warm heading into us to keep us that much warmer through the evenings. So keeping yourself comfortable and keeping yourself enjoying the night sky means keeping yourself at a good comfort level as well. So
Okay. Chris, if you
yeah,
could share your screen so I can they can
sure.
see me a little more,
Okay,
then
no problem.
I'm going to try to show there's a book that I would want to recommend for this as well that you can take with you.
Start sharing my screen. There we go.
There I am.
Hey,
Oh,
welcome back.
okay. So what I want to do is also recommend a book that would be perfect to take with you on that night sky adventure. And this one here is called Sky and Telescope's Pocket Sky Atlas, and it's a bound book, so it's all put together with nice binding, and it covers all the different times of the year. It breaks things down into categories. It's basically star maps is what it is, but they're really easy to look at and understand. And if you're gonna take one of these, you certainly want to have a red light with you so that you can see the charts nicely. But they're laid out. It's laid out very well. It's easy. It's a really easy read. And again, like I say, it breaks it down into nice little bite sizes so that you can go around with it. And this is available pretty much at any major book place like Amazon. You can get it. You should be able to get it at um, Indigo
Indigo
Chapters.
chapters, yeah.
And, yeah, and also again, you can order it right directly from Sky and Telescope as well. So that would be an absolutely great thing to take with you, along with your binoculars and if you're Mike, taking your coffee. So yeah, that's something I'd really recommend there.
It looks good except for the Habs hat, Mike says. So sorry about that, Paul. Enjoy the
That's all
decline.
right.
We got someone else on here. Enjoy the decline is on here asking, do you guys know if it's true that Saturn is losing its rings? I'm not sure if that's actually happening or not. I do. What I have seen though is that one of the moons of Saturn, Enceladus, actually has geysers that spit up into space, and they have determined that Enceladus is actually replenishing the ring system for Saturn. So I don't know how much that's happening, but what I think whatever Saturn is losing in its ring system, the moon Enceladus, hopefully we'll get a trip out there shortly, is actually replacing a lot of the smaller particles in the ring system. So hopefully that answers your question. Enjoy the decline there.
Okay, and Maggie, I like the book and I like the hat.
Good
Thanks,
stuff.
Maggie.
So Paul, behind you there, you got a camera set up. I guess you must have been doing some night sky stuff there behind you with your tripod.
I do, but before I get into that, Dave McCashin asks, "Did you hear the Betelgeuse has been dimming since October?" And yes, it's noticeable. We talked about that a little bit earlier on in the show, Dave. But what it is people have been following that star for quite some time because it is one that's going to go supernova within the next now to 1 million years, they say, which is actually quite short in astronomical terms. Um, but it's a variable star, so for it to change its magnitude is normal. But it is the lowest that it's been in about the last 25 years. There's a specific astronomer, I think, out of Nova Scotia, who's been following that, and that was his email I read the other day. He was saying it is at its lowest that it has been in 25 years. So they're certainly keeping an eye on it, and when it does go, it'll be spectacular for us to see, but it's a long, long ways away from us. So, whether it happens in our lifetime, I'm not sure. I surely hope that I see one before my time's done on this earth, but we'll see. But anyway, I hope that answers your question, Dave. If you just Google that Betelgeuse and its dimming, you'll get a lot of information on it. And the RASC team down in Nova Scotia are keeping a close eye on that too. So Dave Chapman and Tim Doucette and those folks down that area, they would be really good folks to have a chat about that with as well. So I hope that answers your question, Dave.
Mike Powell mentioned that the tilt gives the impression of the rings disappearing. So that's true too, Mike. Saturn has a tilt with respect to the plane of the planets, as all the planets, I guess, do. And our tilt is 23.5 degrees. Saturn's is more like 26, I think it is. So anyway, as Saturn goes around the sun and we go around the sun faster than Saturn, our view of Saturn changes each year. So sometimes the rings appear wide open to us, and there will be a few years from now when the rings will actually disappear completely. So we'll just see a straight line basically across Saturn, just knowing that there are rings there, but we won't actually be able to see them. So that could be some of the things too about Saturn. The fact that Enceladus is replenishing the ring system, though, that is a fact. They have found that. That was mostly from the Cassini mission that was out to Saturn that ended its mission there just last year. Over 20 mission.
Excuse me, Chris. You mentioned about the camera behind me. So basically, what that is just see which way I can spin it. Not used to these cameras.
Right. There you go.
There we go. So there's the camera there. So actually back here is the camera. This is a DSLR. I use that a lot for almost exclusively for most of my moon shots now. And I use this lens. This happens to be a 150 to 600 millimeter lens. So this is really fantastic for getting moon images. It really brings the moon in nice. So I can do that. I do all my bird photography with that lens. And so it's just a great all-rounder. So if you are getting into astrophotography or you want to take pictures of the night sky, you can certainly use a DSLR and a good lens. You can get all kinds of great shots. I recommend starting with a wide-angle lens instead of a telephoto, because then you're going to get a lot of forgiveness in the motion of the sky.
Right.
The wider the angle, the smaller the picture is, the more of the Milky Way and the stars that you will get in the sky, and the less movement that you'll notice. So that means you can have your lens open for a longer period of time and collect more light and get a really, really nice shot. Yeah. But if you want to do something that takes really quick shutter speeds, like the moon, for example, then go for your telephoto, pop it on a tripod, and it's just a quick release. Probably best thing to use would be a remote control. But yeah, so that's kind of what that one is.
Right. So yeah, you've done a lot of Milky Way shots yourself anyway. And setting up for the Milky Way is again the fact of having a wide angle lens, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Because the Milky Way, as you know, is huge. I mean, you can't capture all of it. Even with a wide angle lens, you'd have to take a mosaic to be able to capture the whole swath of the Milky Way from the southern sky or the tip to the northern tip. We see it in the summer. So
right. Are you able to bring up your? Am I sharing right now? No, you're sharing.
I am. Yeah.
I wonder if you could bring up your Stellarium program again.
Okay. There we are.
Okay, so I'm not seeing it.
Okay, just give me a second here.
There we go. Okay, I got you now.
You got it?
Yep. And we got Orion focused in, have we? No, that's me. Here we go again.
There. Okay, I'm
Okay,
looking right at
I'm
Orion.
going to stop sharing mine. Okay, and you're going to start sharing yours.
Okay, I'm right on Orion right now.
Okay, so you share your screen if you would now for me.
Okay, there
There
you
we go.
go.
Thank you. Okay, so just we were talking about Milky Way shots. There is a winter Milky Way as well, right? Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Okay, I lose you.
No, 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 no. I was reading a comment. My
Okay.
apologies. Sorry, Chris. Go ahead.
So there's the winter Milky Way that we can offer in that picture as well. If you just kind of spin from
Oh,
Orion
yeah.
around up into Cassiopeia, like we always talk about capturing the Milky Way when we're into the summertime sky. But you can
Hmm.
see here that there's a huge wintertime Milky Way sky too. So it passes
Oh,
the same thing. There's
there we
Cygnus
go.
over in our northwestern sky, I guess at this point. Cygnus, of course, is one of the three constellations that we assume that is part of our summer triangle. Um,
Hmm.
and if we pass that straight up into Cassiopeia,
Hmm.
we're actually looking and right up into Perseus there above it again. We're actually looking at the winter Milky Way. So the Milky Way is still apparent. We're looking into the Perseus band of the Milky Way here, though. So the stars, and I get a lot of comments about people have a lot of comments about the sky at night in the wintertime. Why does it seem to be so much crisper, so much better looking sky? And I can see so many more stars in the wintertime than I can in the summertime sky. And there is a reason for that. I mean, I guess part of the reason is that right now we're turned away from the summer part of the Milky Way, which would be the center of the Milky Way. So we're about 26,000 light years from the center of the Milky Way. And we're looking back in the summertime, we're looking back into Sagittarius, is where the center of the Milky Way is. And we're looking back into that brilliant big ball of stars, which causes a lot of light pollution. Basically, it kind of lightens up the sky a fair amount. So we see a lot of stars, yes, if you look in that direction. And the Milky Way is also very beautiful, of course. But we have a lot more light pollution being caused by that many more stars. But in the wintertime, we're kind of turned away from the center of the Milky Way and we're looking back into deep space. And of course, in deep space, the sky would be much blacker. There are fewer stars there to cast as much glow out into space. And thirdly, basically, the stars we're looking at are in the Perseus arm. So they're kind of closer to us than the stars that are in the center of the Milky Way. So the stars are closer to us, so they would appear brighter because they're closer. And because there's a large contrast, we're looking back into the blackness of space, the stars appear to be brighter. So that's why our sky looks so much different in the wintertime sky than it would in the summertime.
As well, too, you'll notice with this particular part of the Milky Way, as is the other end, the opposite, the southern end of the Milky Way. But you'll notice too, like Cygnus, Cassiopeia, all of those ones, they're continually in the Milky Way. Cassiopeia, of course, is circumpolar, so that doesn't set. That's always there. But the nice thing about the Milky Way, where it's so darn full of stars and so active, this is where a lot of the fantastic nebulosity and stuff is. So if you look at just off the Cassiopeia, right next door, of course, is Andromeda. So there's the Andromeda galaxy, and it's just getting out of that part of the arm. If you look over this side of Cassiopeia, then we have another huge emission nebula there. I'm going to shrink that down a little bit so I can go up to right up here. These are absolutely wonderful winter targets, or actually all year round targets, but they're good this time of the year because they're up high in the sky. There's the Heart and the Soul Nebula. And so if we just shrink that down again and just keep going down that arm, I mean, my gosh, look at all the nebulosity all in and about in that part of it. You get down into Cygnus, and of course, I won't get into Cygnus because Mike and Chris go Cygnus.
There's another whole program right there.
But so there's Cygnus, but look at all the goodies that are in and around Cygnus, which is my favorite summer target. But then you go back over to Orion, and it's the same sort of thing. So now there's the winter target of the same thing, and again, just chock full of absolutely wonderful targets to observe and to image. So so there's lots up there.
So Orion Hunter, that is the target for tonight. And Paul, again, I guess we're at 9 o'clock now, so
Oh my
thank
goodness.
you very much. Yeah, wow, went by fast again. It always does. I'd like to first of all say thank you to everybody who joined on to the program here to watch it with us tonight. Apologize for the technical little glitches there we had at the start, but we're more than happy to continue on with the show as we did. And Paul, I'd like to thank you again for joining on with me and showing those excellent images that we had and all that information that you were able to share with us tonight. And folks, I guess we're gonna call that a night for this week. Wishing everybody out there happy holidays and enjoy your Christmas season. And we'll be back to you again next Sunday night with hopefully a clear sky and some nice new targets. Great. Okay. Thanks, folks,
Thank you, everybody. Merry Christmas.
and take care.